Hi, this is Heidi, episode 89. Perfectionism disconnects us from ourselves. Life isn't a spectator sport. Success comes to those who show up every day with a pocket full of courage, grit, and a little sparkle. I'm glad you're here. Hello, how are you? Welcome to episode 89 of Hi, this is Heidi. I graduated from high school in 1989, and we would say the class of 89 is mighty fine. So I'm going to say this episode for sure is going to be mighty fine. Please make sure you are subscribed in iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get this podcast so that a new episode is downloaded each week. This week, awesome Becca posted in Instagram an episode. She posted all of her notes that she took on episode 87, the first in this perfectionism trio. I read through them and I thought, oh, I gotta listen to that episode again. I loved just reading her notes on it. Please tag me so I can return a thank you heart to you. Thank you to all of the notes that you guys are always sending me about how helpful these episodes are for you. We are all doing this work together, friends. Now, this past week, I traveled to Utah for a few events, the biggest being the wedding of a daughter of very close friends who really are family to me. My husband and I were at the wedding luncheon. We were chatting with people at our table, and people asked what we do for our professions. I mentioned my coaching practice and my podcast. Several people at the table, they asked for the name of the podcast, and I realized the name of this podcast, Hi, this is Heidi, came from the mother and father of the bride at the wedding we were at. They were the ones who, when I would call and ask for Whitney, I would say, Hi, this is Heidi. And so Jamie just started calling me that. It was a fun moment as it came together all in person. That afternoon, I had a special experience to be inside the temple and to witness the sealing of the couple. And I wanted to share with you all what the temple sealer said to us. Now, I'll just explain briefly. In our church, we believe couples can be married and sealed for all eternity, not just this life. As the sealer started speaking to us, he said, none of us are perfect, but we're all here because we're striving to be on a certain path. I loved how he said that. Striving is the goal, not perfection. Trying and trying again is the goal. Now, in the last two episodes, I talked about how perfectionism and the energy around trying to be flawless and not making mistakes or not showing weaknesses creates distance and disconnect between us and first our Savior, and second, between us and other people. In today's episode, I want to talk about the third disconnect created by a perfectionist mindset. This is how we disconnect from ourselves. I love the quote, perfectionists walk a tightrope over the valley of low self-esteem. I can just feel the stress, tension, worry, anxiety, and single focus of trying to stay balanced on a tightrope or on a balance beam for fear of falling. Much of our wanting to avoid making mistakes is because what we will make it mean about ourselves. We want to avoid the story we will tell ourselves in our minds. We want to avoid the shame and negative talk that will replay over and over in our minds. The story is rooted in things that I like to call thought errors. These errors are thoughts that we've adopted as truths, but y'all, they are not true. It isn't true that falling is bad. It isn't true that failing is bad. It isn't true that falling means we're weak. It isn't true that making mistakes means we're less valuable as people. Our brain on default might offer us these thoughts. Maybe we hear from other people these thoughts, but they aren't true. We have to recognize that any normal human brain might give us these thoughts, but we then have to manage them. Y'all, we are not our thoughts. We might have the thought, oh, you're so dumb. Why did you fail that test? But we need to see that thought for what it is, not true, not helpful. But yes, the type of thought normal human beings do have from time to time. I love how Dr. Brené Brown says we struggle with perfectionism in areas where we are the most vulnerable to shame. Let me repeat that, using words in the way that I'm teaching you. We struggle with the reality that we'll make mistakes in the parts of our lives where we're already feeling the most vulnerable. The areas where we desperately want to be perfect, an area where we derive a great identity and satisfaction, and where we struggle to build ourselves up in our own minds. We don't want to fail in the areas of our life where we struggle to give ourselves the most grace. There's no place I see this more evident with myself and with my clients than with the self-esteem we have as mothers. Every mother fears that she'll make a mistake and will do something to harm her children, maybe physical harm, like not protecting them in some way, or emotional harm, worrying that we said the wrong things at the wrong time, or much more. These fears, or this walking the maternal tightrope, is based on false assumptions. See, we aren't going to be flawless. We're going to make mistakes as mothers. We don't want to, but we can't avoid it. Our most important job then is to decide, how will I talk to myself when I think I haven't shown up the way I want to? What will I say to myself when I notice I need to course correct or say I'm sorry to my children? See, the tightrope is woven with shame, and shame is I am bad. There's something wrong with me. And even with all the mistakes we make, there is nothing wrong with us. We're human. We are trying our best. I remember the first week of my oldest son's life. I was struggling to breastfeed him, and in full perfectionist energy, tension, and anxiety, I was trying and trying. I had very perfectionist all or nothing, black or white thinking. Breastfeeding was good and anything else was bad. Lots of faulty thinking there. After a week, we took him to a lactation specialist, and I realized something I was doing was causing him to not get enough milk. He had lost weight and I felt terrible. 1 week into being a mother, and my internal dialogue was causing me to feel so much guilt and insecurity in feeding him and in every other decision. The whole idea that I might make mistakes wasn't a reality and truth I wanted to accept right then. I didn't want to do a single thing, in this case out of ignorance, that would put my child at a disadvantage. Now, here are 4 truths I learned over time that would eventually get me off that tightrope and relax me into much more confident mothering. And notice how this applies to every part of your life. First, I'm going to make mistakes, and it's okay. Second, I'm always doing my best. Even as I learn and do better tomorrow, I still have to acknowledge each day, even with mistakes, I'm really striving to show up as my best. Third, I'm not doing this worse or better than anyone else. Fourth, if I'm going to grow, change, and improve, I need to be making mistakes. Notice how all 4 of those thoughts and what I consider truths, all of those pivot us totally away from the all or nothing thinking. Life is actually all in the gray. There is no black or white. We're given human brains and the agency to think for ourselves, to practice telling ourselves each of those truths over and over. Even if someone else thinks that we are bad, or if someone else wants us to feel shame for our choices, or if someone else thinks we are unworthy, we don't have to agree with them. We get to choose the story we tell ourselves in our mind. What another person thinks about you says nothing about you and everything about the lens they see you and the world through. You do not need to agree with people that tell you those things. I don't want you to agree with people who think less of you, people who belittle or shame or talk down to you. Do not let those opinions land on you. Let them land in front of you and then dismiss them. See, the relationship that we have with ourselves resides wholly in our thoughts and the mental ticker tape we play every day. Our default brain will look for the negative. We have to use our higher brain, our human and default brain, to question and dismiss the default I'm not good enough message. We have to practice these positive and truthful thoughts of I'm trying my best and it's okay to make mistakes. Please, we have to remember our mistakes don't define us. Our mistakes are nothing about our identity and who we are. Our flaws actually remind us we are inherently valuable as children of God. Nothing can take away our worthiness, and infinite value. Even the silly negative thoughts that will pop up, they remind us our brain is working fine. And how do we want to manage these thoughts? Comparison and compare despair, as I call it, usually take place primarily in our mind, and they disconnect us from our infinite value. Going back to the example of being a mother, I remember living in compare despair for years, thinking I needed to do things a certain way, and if I did, it would mean I was a good mother. The worst of this was the mental dialogue I had with myself, putting myself down, seeking validation outside of myself so I could feel valuable. It was such a damaging cycle. See, there is no external validation that can make up for internal lack of love. There just isn't enough. Real self-esteem, true self-validating and self-love is internal. It's what we create. It's when we catch ourselves comparing and when we can pivot our thoughts to, it's okay, you see Jane made all that food homemade and you bought all your food at the store. You're both doing it right for your life. You're doing your best. Some days you make it homemade if you want to. Some days you don't. What someone else is doing means nothing about you, means nothing about me. I like to say to myself, I'm so grateful you keep showing up each day. You're trying. One of the biggest disconnects we create with comparison is when we start thinking we need to do things the way another person is doing their life. This disconnects and distances us from our real self, who we are supposed to be. See, I'm supposed to be Heidi, and you're supposed to be who you are. My daughter is supposed to be Abby, and my neighbors, they need to be themselves. Pivoting from comparison to our own self-acceptance connects us back to our real selves. I noticed my brain start to compare this week and offer me some hurtful thoughts as our hostess made fantastic meals that met my son's dietary restrictions, meals that I hadn't yet figured out how to make, gluten-free, or just more elaborate meals than I usually make. I saw these tricky thoughts. Oh, Heidi, you're not good enough. She does this better than you. Why can't you be like that? And I just stopped those thoughts. First, they aren't helpful and they aren't encouraging me to want to try new meal options. And second, they aren't true. I'm trying my best. I have way less experience with those meals and it's okay. Our family is figuring this out. In fact, as I bring home new food options for my son and we try different brands, I tell him, it's okay to tell me you don't like that product or that meal. We're just trying everything. It won't hurt my feelings. We'll hate some foods and we'll love others. This is the journey to figure it out. Now, one of the best shifts I've made in the last years as I've done this work on my own thoughts and my relationship with myself is I'm enjoying the process. I'm enjoying everyday life so much more. I used to feel like I was always working towards something. I was focused on some undefined future end product for myself, for my family, maybe what my life was working up towards, or maybe what my children would be, who they would become, or what my life was all working up towards. I wasn't enjoying the process. This energy of working up towards something created insecurity and anxiety that just didn't feel good. I don't remember how this shifted exactly. It's been gradual. I realized each season of my life, each day, each year is creating a quilt. I have seasons that are certain quilt squares. Some quilt squares look different than other seasons of my life and what those squares look like. And it's all beautiful. There is no end game. Each year and each season will make a new quilt square in my life quilt, and my job is to honor and accept how each season unfolds. I'm no longer trying to get across a future finish line or earn some future achievement. The making of my life quilt and my being present today with my flaws and greatness, this is what it's all about. I see my past quilt squares of life where I had less wisdom than I do today. And I have such compassion and grace for that version of myself. I know she was trying her very best, and even with mistakes, some big, some small, I know she had good intentions. And I know those quilt squares, they're important to build my quilt to be what it is today. That grace and forgiveness and acceptance has me building a much stronger relationship with myself. I'm making many more mistakes. I'm failing because I'm trying more, and I'm growing more than I have in a while, mainly because I'm working to strengthen my self-esteem. Any choices I make, any missteps on the tightrope or on the wide road, I want all of those steps to be over an anchored and a solid foundation of self-love. I hear people sometimes afraid to love themselves for fear that love takes away from love of others. But y'all, it's our job to love ourselves. No one else can create our relationship with ourselves. The more love we have for ourselves, the more grace and acceptance we have for ourselves, the more we have to give others. Years ago, a friend told me that her mother used to go places and only say mean and negative things about all the women around her. She said her mother was incredibly critical. And I told her, this is a total reflection of the critical and judgmental thoughts her mother had about herself. Her mother couldn't love herself, so she had no capacity to love others. My friend suddenly saw her mother in a much different light, and she developed strong compassion, sadness, and empathy to her. An empty vessel has nothing to pour, has nothing to give. Now, I have some very practical advice. If you struggle with your thoughts about yourself in certain situations, maybe when you're on social media, get off social media or stop going to places and situations where you are triggered. Now, nothing outside of you is creating those thoughts. Nothing outside of you is making you feel insecure. It's all from your thoughts. But still, while you work to build yourself, stack the cards in your favor. If someone is always putting you down and you struggle to manage your thoughts around them, limit your time with them. Work to always be building others. Work to be the positive sunshine in the world. And I promise you, the darkness won't want to be with the sunshine. Watch how you tell yourself the story of your past. This happens in your mind, and it's an important part of your relationship with yourself. If you find yourself always replaying all of your mistakes and bloopers, well, first, you're human. Your brain thinks that there's something useful to this. Then question with curiosity that story. I used to always tell myself that I wasn't good with money because at one point I had credit card debt that I couldn't pay off each month. I had an internal relationship of shaming myself, which was disconnecting me from offering myself grace, forgiveness, and accepting I'm human and that there's nothing wrong with me then and there's nothing wrong with me now. I rewrote that story of credit card debt from being bad to just being something that happened and that I learned from, and just part of my life quilt. With curiosity, I look at my thoughts and beliefs about debt and money, and I'm learning so much more about myself. But the learning and the loving myself can only come by curiously and compassionately accepting every part of myself. I'm going to leave you with Mufasa's wise advice. When your relationship with yourself needs more connection, remember who you are. Forces in the world and even parts of our default lower brain block these truths, which create huge disconnect. The truth is our identity has nothing to do with what we do, the choices we make, how we look, how much money is in our bank account, how many checks we've bounced, how many speeding tickets we've gotten, how many times we've been married or aren't married. We are lovable. We are enough just by being us. Our imperfections and our achievements won't change our enoughness and our lovableness. The happiest and most resilient people in the world speak to themselves mentally with kindness, compassion, grace, and acceptance, acknowledging and accepting all of their parts. They know there are very few right or wrong choices. Most all of our life is in the gray, and we get to decide, just in our minds, with our thoughts, we get to decide what we will make each choice mean. Okay, that's it for today. If you'd like private personalized coaching to dismantle your perfectionist mindset and tendencies, and trust me, we all have them in one way or another, just you and me digging into your thoughts, changing and up-leveling your confidence, your beliefs. If you know you want to change and you just can't get out of your way, I get it. I have been there. Sign up for a consult call on HeidiBenjaminson.com. A confident mother is the greatest gift to her family, not a perfect mother. Your family wants you to feel confident, anchored and calm, I can help you uncover this version of yourself. Have a great week.